There was I won't say an unexpected power failure because it was scheduled, but in the area I am, they often just don't turn us off, I guess. So I guess I was just trying to be hopeful. It was actually scheduled to be off until 6 a.m. my time tomorrow morning, so another 5.5 hours. But you never know. So the lights could go off again. If it does, then you guys know why. I'm just going to say hi to some of you. So I'll be another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get going. Gail Walker, hi from Florida. JW says, so who's responsible? Angelia Wilcox, hello. Janae Ann, we are back. Yeah, we are. Half Rutter, good to see you. Leslie McNair, hello. MSB, hi. Tammy O'Connor. Mrs. T, where's Mr. T? Hello from Texas. I thought I slowed the chat down. Oh, it did slow down. Okay. Lisa Ryson, hi from Iowa. Not quite sure how to say where you're from in Iowa. Someone's from Denmark. Layla Anahid, hi from Boston. Nick Q from England. Well, you're up late. I know it's almost the same time there as it is here. Timmy, stop smelling the keyboard. Okay. Eve J, hi from Scotland. Joe Novak, Salton City. Karina Linds Geckos, hi from Ontario. Deborah Christ, hi from, I think, Southern California. Autumn Haynes, hi. Miami, Rhode Island. Lynn P, hi. Marie from Connecticut. Good to see you guys. So you know why we're here. We are here to take a little bit further Don's sort of pretty incredible interview over the phone. We want to look at the implications of that. I'm going to also tell you guys what my latest theory is based on what he said. So I've provided a sort of a scenario, and now I'm going to sort of fine tune it to some extent, right? So that's something that I'm going to be about. I'm also going to be talking about the consequences of, where are we going to be? Is there going to be an arrest? And what is likely to happen kind of soon or imminently? Where's all of this going, kind of thing. I also want to talk briefly about 2 or 3 other things. For example, were tools used in this case, and how did that play out? And then also, I think I'll deal with this first. Just a question which I think a lot of us sort of ask ourselves at this point, but it's like, why do they lie? Like, do they know that people can see that they're lying? Why is this happening? Why is this sort of incredible behavior going on? What is kind of going on in these people's minds, right? So I'm going to sort of deal with that as well and take your questions. I did actually want to do this interactively with Stephanie, but then Stephanie said she wouldn't be available, but then she is available. She was available. And also with Bria. And so maybe we're going to do it tomorrow. We'll see. So as soon as we hit 1,000, I'm going to get going. Let me look at some of your comments. Daffodil says, Timmy, can you give a wave? Hey? Mediocre comedian, good to see you there or here. From New Hampshire. Anya James, love from San Antonio, Texas. Dinah Wright, howdy from Texas. Judy Hammer. Robin Anderson says, hello, Timmy. Vicky Andres, thanks, Vicky. Claire Micklejohn, hi from Maryland. White Mamba, new patron from Liverpool. Okay, good to see you. I saw someone saying, this is the only factual channel. And it just made me think, because I don't really know, was there someone who was saying they found the red vehicle? Because I know some people pointed out at the prayer vigil, there's a rear vehicle in the, sorry, there's a red vehicle in a sort of rear area, right? So I just wondered, was there a channel that was sort of saying that's the red truck? If so, I would be curious to know who did that, just out of kind of morbid curiosity. Norma Bell, hello from Springfield, Tennessee. Oh, Tennessee, good to see you here. Catherine O'Brien, I've got my schnauzer next to me. Okay, that's good. Amazing little animals, eh? Full of personality and quite intelligent too, and stubborn, but also quite sweethearted. Katie Mouse, hi Nick and Timmy from Nottingham. Claire Macker from, is it Ireland? Jackie Linton, how can he say all the dogs were not there? Absolutely. Bria left me a voice note, which I'm going to be putting up on Patreon. She was just saying she knows wolf packs quite well, dog packs, based on her experience in Bangkok. So hopefully we can get her talking about that. But it is quite weird how probably the most significant factor that disproves an abduction, Don just sort of brushes aside, like, oh, they just went somewhere else or something. Angie Erickson, thanks a lot, Angie. I've got a friend just down the road who's just got two dogs, a schnauzer and another dog, and they bark each other into a frenzy. That's just with two dogs. And that's like when I'm at the gate. So, hello from, that's Sinka. Hello from Cleveland, Spooky Che. Don contradicts himself, absolutely. Regina Roberts, hello from New York. Ellen, I live for your truth. Thanks a lot, Ellen. Elizabeth, thanks from Michigan. Okay, so I see we're over 1,000. Let me get going. Timmy, can you just sort of park down there? Oh, okay. Okay, so he always gets like this when I start a live. It's almost like, a last-ditch effort at some me time. So I want to start by addressing this fairly broad question of why do they lie? What is actually going on? And I think the best way to answer it, so first of all, in a situation like this, someone is just continuing what they do normally. So it's actually natural for them to lie. And so in this situation, it's also natural, right? So let's take Chris Watts as an example. We're going to come back to Don Wells in a moment. Chris Watts was used to, Half-Brother says, the dogs is a red flag. How would he know? He was supposedly not there when it happened. So absolutely. I was actually looking online for images of huge red flags, like where you see a small little person, there's like a huge red flag. And it's not, I couldn't really find anything like that, but that is what you need to imagine. Like a small person, maybe seeing it from far away, and there's this huge flag, almost like on a beach or something. Tina says, can you share more about your granny theory? She's fascinating to me. If we stick to the Macbeth theme, she could be one of the three. Okay. Okay, so let me just finish my thought on that. Thanks a lot for that, Tina. In terms of the lying, it's basically habitual. So it's someone who, has been economical with the truth, and then when they're in a situation where the police are involved, well, it's just more of the same, right? So in terms of something like the Chris Watts case, he was having an affair. And so in the 5 weeks prior, he was really getting up into the habit of not being honest with his wife and being, you know what I mean, and perhaps probably also not being completely honest with his mistress. And then that then goes into the circumstances of the case. And it's a situation in terms of his mind of, how can I put it? I was able to fool my wife. I was able to sort of pull the wool over the eyes of other people. You know, nobody knew I was having an affair. Friends, you know, like the Lindstroms, and also my mistress to some extent. I was able to sort of do that. So how hard could it be doing this with the FBI, with a cop, with whatever? And the answer is actually, well, it's not so easy. Try doing it in a polygraph. It's not so easy. The level of difficulty, the degree of difficulty, lying to people who know you and sort of trust you, and doing it with people who are used to dealing with liars and so on, dissemblers and polygraphers. It's a totally different ball game. Of course, they think, well, you know, I got away with that, and that. I'll just keep doing it. It's just, you know, if I don't want there to be consequences, so I'll just lie. So if we take that with Chris Watts, where he's basically had practice telling lies, I don't know, beyond the affair. I don't know how much he was not an honest person beyond that, but the affair sort of gave him a sense of confidence that I can mislead those really close to me. I can do things and no one's going to know, right? The secret calculator app was giving him all of that confidence as well. So then if you look at Don Wells and you say, so how does one apply that? It's kind of a situation of when drug addicts are with drug addicts, I think the same thing's kind of going on. There's sort of mutual, I was almost going to say mutually assured destruction, but there's almost like mutual mendacity, you know, and it might not be over big things. It's, you know, why are you late, or how much money have you got on you, or where were you, whatever. But then there would be a lot of sort of kind of mini dissembling, but very automatic, right? And so, and then also covering things up. You know, why are you in such a weird mood? Why don't you have any money? Whatever. Or where did you get that money from? And so what then happens is, again, they become very seasoned, very talented liars. This kind of comes naturally. I see Stephanie's here. Is that Be Right Back? Okay. I don't know if Bree is here, by the way, because I think the last thing I did leave them a note saying, you know, we're going back, but I've kind of just said to everyone, I'm not going to go on, and then the power came on. So a little bit of a interesting thing going on. Heather West, while you're up late. Thanks, Heather. Jan, thanks a lot. So do you guys get what I'm talking about? It's someone who is a natural liar. They lie as a sort of a natural. It's naturally part of their. I don't want to say personality, but or even their vocabulary, but it's just something that is like second nature. It's not a big deal. And so when they in an extraordinary situation, for example, Don talking to Chris McDonough, where, you know, this is actually a seasoned detective. Hi, Bria, good to see you here. Then it's actually kind of a weird thing where they sort of go, well, you know, it's same old, same old. I've spoken to the police before. I've spoken to, and so there's this sort of hubris, this confidence that, you know, how hard is this going to be? He doesn't know the details. I'm gonna spin my little tale, and you know, I'm going to be honest about things, but the very critical information, I'm not going to be honest about it, and I'm going to mislead them and lead them down the garden path. what is easy to forget if you're trying to do that is someone like Chris McDonough has spoken to, as he says in his bio, he's done this many times. So you can actually see, you find, I've written lots of books about true crime. So you can kind of, there's certain strategies where you can see what is going on. One is, well, why didn't you do that? Why aren't you talking about that in more detail? So why are you focusing on that and not on that? That's another quite subtle thing. And obviously you're not going to draw the person's attention to that, especially not in the beginning. You might come back to it later and say, let's talk about that. But the fact that they are not going to volunteer certain things is already going to give you an indication. What is a little bit difficult is in a situation like this, you might have someone who is not guilty of the thing that you're dealing with, but they are actually guilty of something else. So you've got to be careful sort of conflating that. They are hiding something, but it may not be that particular thing, if you know what I mean. So the fact that they've got something to hide doesn't automatically make them guilty of something, but I also think you can't say it automatically doesn't either. And that's where you need a little bit of to interrogate information and have a handle on it, right? So, I think a lot of us saw Pixy Stix, thanks a lot. I think a lot of us saw in the Chris Watts case, we sort of rolled our eyes and we were like, this is incredible. This guy just keeps on talking and giving and whatever. And, a lot of it was garbage, but it's still the opposite of what you see in a lot of other cases where lawyers say, do not say anything. You have the right to remain silent. Well, I'm going to use that right. I'm not going to say anything. And it seems like maybe it's partially due to social media, the expressive society that we live in, that we want to communicate. And if someone disagrees with us, then we want to make a statement about that. And Plunder put up quite a good post, I think, from Rose Meyer saying, Don, don't worry, you have a chance to, maybe you can go on to Chris McDonough's channel again and just clear up any confusion. And one knows whether that might happen. So Pixy Stix, no, I'm not married. A little bit of a irrelevant question here, but no. So do you guys follow? We'll get to sort of more informal banter maybe a little bit later, but let's just get through this. Let's just look at some of your questions. Tara Mama, Marilyn, I hope he turns. Okay, so that's a different case. Robin, I think Don may be admitting to lesser things, hoping we believe he's not guilty of worse things. Well put. I think it's important to say in a kind of a global way, and I'm speaking really about the players in this case. So, please don't take it personally if you think I'm talking about you or someone you know. I just think in a situation like this, where someone is a drug addict or often intoxicated to the extent they are, I'm not saying getting intoxicated is selfish. I'm not saying doing this or that is selfish. I'm saying to the extent that they were doing it seems to be excessive and extreme, and someone who is kind of very selfish, and it's about me, right? And you don't get a sense of loving solidarity between Don and Candace, even either from him to her or from her to him. But I do think selfishness is part of why what has happened here is someone who's self-centered. They are selfish in their wants and needs, and you can't be like that if you're a parent to a 5-year-old. You can't say, go and find someone now. As a father, you need to go and do that. Betty Bolton, thanks very much. What did someone say about larceny? Possession of a controlled substance, larceny, assault, evading law enforcement, hiding in sheds. essay. Yeah, why we don't lie. Good point, Thomas. That's addiction. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to talk about is, we sort of innocently asked the question because we are, hopefully, the true crime community are more honest and more truthful generally than criminals. Let's hope so, right? I'm just saying lying isn't second nature to us. And if someone had to ask you or me to lie, we'd probably feel a weird thing of, wow, I'm kind of going out of my comfort zone, or it feels funny. There would be a sense of I'm crossing a line. There certainly is for me, right? Valerie says, did you notice he both claimed he hadn't talked to Candace the whole way home and he did talk to Candace the whole drive home? Okay, so Barbara Murray, thanks a lot. So now we go from that aspect to the next level, which is Facebook. Now, I've kind of been wanting to talk about this for a while, but it's useful for me that Don said so much, so I don't really need to prove it to you. I think it's quite obvious, but some people might say, well, you're being very unkind. You're being very judgmental, something like that. I'm just using the facts before me. I'm using the information, and I'm letting that lead me into the case. Certainly don't have preconceived ideas. I do have an overarching theory, but I'm not sure if that would then influence some of these thoughts. So what I want to talk about on the sort of next level is Don admits that they were constantly on Facebook trying to do a PR campaign to talk to the public and I guess get their message out. Those were his words. He said him and Candace were on Facebook 24/7. Now, something that I noticed was that Candace was on Facebook a heck of a lot at certain points in her timeline. There were sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 posts a day. And you got the feeling that she really got caught up in Facebook, that she was really developing her identity and some kind of sort of gangster vibe going on there. And you got a sense that she got a bit of reinforcement and support, and she enjoyed that. And, let's face it, a lot of us do enjoy that, I guess, narcissistic supply from social media. For some of us, it's quite innocent, and it's, well, I love how you look in that photo, but for some, it's something that you start to need more and need more. But the point I'm trying to make is just that you might say being a drug addict is bad, but being addicted to social media, that's okay. Addiction is bad, whether you're addicted to coffee or chocolates or whatever. Addiction is bad. Raymond says 2,000 viewers hit like. Thanks, Raymond. Sharon Stevenson, thanks as always for your thoughts and perspective. Thanks, Sharon. I'm glad to be here. I thought I was going to be here 5 hours from now. So what I'm trying to say is, in addition to all of these things that were going on, I think there was also the social media addiction, which you get a sense of through the repeated references to TikTok videos. What was Candace doing when Summer was swimming? What was Macbeth doing when Summer was swimming? And so the TikTok videos come up again and again and again and again, right? And so that isn't in addition to the distraction, the undermining of what should be a parent's attention span, a parent's focus, a parent's responsibility. I'm just saying that's not like absolutely critical, but I think it just is important to be quite clear. What about addiction to TCRS? And someone puts their hand in front of their mouth. You don't have to worry about that because I'm going on a trip in a couple of weeks, and like I did a couple of months ago, and so my activity is going to drop down, so it'll give you guys a chance to recharge. But in a case like this, the Summer Wells case, we want to hit it quite hard, we want to focus on it, and do the analysis while it is really, we have a sense of urgency about it. It's day 51 since Summer went missing, and all of this attention is effectively putting pressure on, I think, some of the people involved, and that's good. That's good to have that pressure there. And someone was talking about grandma. I did say in my previous video, something about if you're going to play your immunity idol, now is the time to do so. So we'll see whether grandma responds to that. We'll see whether grandma does come forward, because I think she, in a weird way, holds the key to something happening sooner than later. Mad about true crime. Thanks a lot, Mad about true crime. So now I want to go a little bit more into all the fabric of what we're talking about, the fabric of what has been happening. And so I'm going to ask you guys a question. What tools do you think were used on the afternoon of June 15th? And if you think I'm using cautious language, I am, right? So the question is, what tools do you think were used? I think I can just leave it there. What tools do you think were used? And then you can take it a little bit further and just say, be a bit more specific and say, on the afternoon, perhaps late afternoon of June 15th, which tools do you think were used? And I see a couple of you saying shovel. That is, I think, the obvious tool, and that's also a tool that Chris Watts used. Shannon Arbuckle says car. Susan says shovel. Stephanie says here now to stay. Thanks, Stephanie. Good to have you. Sorry for messing you around, but it was a bit out of our control. Cynthia says pillow. Someone says a razor. Someone says no tool. Someone says duct tape. Someone says no tools or a car. Susie says something flammable. Sorry. Ramona says trust. That's quite an interesting way of looking at it. Common Sense says concrete. White Mamba says canoe. Someone says hands. Someone says manipulation from Tolkar. KM says trash bag. A lot of these are really good answers. Ray says lime. Half-fast haiku says tool of money. Moonchild says lies. Breedlove says, I think, a plastic bin or a tote. Someone has said a couple of times, when are you going to talk about, for example, Gannon was put into a suitcase, and what about landfills? I have actually thought about that. I have actually, I think, spoken about that in the search strategies. That's one of the first places one should think about are landfills and garbage dumps. But I think you've also got to not generalize. You've also got to look at the specific circumstances, the specific people, and the specific, the tools of their trade, the access they have to it. So, for example, in the Chris Watts case, if you didn't know anything about the Chris Watts case, it would help you to know that he was an oil worker. It would help you to know what that involved, because that was central to what actually happened there. And so you've got to ask yourself again, does that apply here? Does Don's job, what he does for a living, what tools he uses, what sort of kind of context that he finds himself in over the years. So someone who's a habitual liar, that is part of their identity, right? And it leads to the criminal mind. Lying leads to darkness. I always say, not all liars are murderers, but all murderers are liars, right? Let me just say, I don't believe that applies to some. I don't think there's intent to to harm Summer in that sort of way. But nevertheless, I do think there are other things at play, such as covering up, manipulating, misleading, and that sort of thing, deleting information. Someone says drugs, plaster, shovel, cash. Okay, so I think the how can I put it, the obvious tool is the shovel, in the sense that it's something that you can imagine is used on a construction site, right? And you can imagine that it's something that Don had access to. And you can also imagine that it was something that was possibly in the shed at home, right? So let me just say that again. And then the fourth aspect of that is, could that be used in disposal? And the answer is yes. It's one of the classic implements, I guess. Halfwriter said, blood test that night showed Candace had pot. Don claims he was clean. Something happened and they're covering their tracks. I don't know if Don says he was clean, do you think he was clean? I think I've said this before. Candace tested positive for marijuana. Do you think that's all she tested positive for? Someone else says a hammer. So I just want you guys to think about that, to think about tools, and to think about the fact that both Chris Watts and Don said that they loaded tools that particular day, right? Now you could say that is completely normal, because that is what they did, but it actually wasn't. In the Chris Watts case, his neighbor said that he would never back his vehicle up and he would never load tools in that way, right? So to us, it might seem not a big deal, but it can be a big deal. So in the same way, doing laundry around the circumstances of a thing like this can be potentially a serious red flag. Loading certain kinds of equipment, tools that can be used in the disposal of a person can also be a serious red flag. And isn't that what we're talking about here? Because at the critical time, on the critical day, Don loads tools into a weird vehicle. Why is he loading it into the Subaru, right? Tools in new car, absolutely. That's from Susan with a question mark. Leslie says top. That's also another good point. Things like plastic bags we see happening often in these sort of cases. Plastic bags, shovels are used. Sometimes boats are used, or someone mentioned a canoe, but a vehicle is often very instrumental in a case like this. Pre-planned event. Okay, so once again, in this case, we've got tools and a work site, right? And I think it's quite important to be clear about this. Don could have got tools from home, from the sheds, one of the sheds that are at home, and I think it would be quite important to inventory what is in those sheds. Like maybe Alison could tell us, or maybe Macbeth could tell us when they were on the property, what was in which shed, because we haven't so far been able to go into them. I do think it's quite interesting that it's more interesting now than when I first heard it. When Chris McDonough was on the hill beside the Welsh Chalet, he wanted to go and look in the shed, and Candace said, no, even the boys aren't allowed in. And one's got to wonder, what was in that shed? Why was it such a big deal? And the answer could be, well, what was being grown in that shed? Bria made quite a good comment about that. She's just put a comment there, weed sheds or weed. So Catherine says, Don used the shed to hide money. I don't know if you need a shed to hide money. I mean, money can be quite small. and wouldn't you want that in your home? But anyway, my theory isn't that she was trafficked. Bear in mind that is what Don wants you to believe, that Candy to lure Summer away. That's quite an interesting idea. That's a possibility, and Candy is actually mentioned. That Grandma gave her a piece of candy, right? So I just made the point that Don wants you to believe that trafficking is an option. I'm not saying that he mentioned it last night, but he certainly has mentioned it on his Facebook, citing statistics and all that kind of thing. Cindy targeted, I said Barrel, and one of his work sites. Okay, there's a drum there, and that has actually been used in the past. So that is actually that's certainly a possibility. Broadly, there are three different ways to get rid of a person long term. The one is fire, the other one is water, and the third one is the slow process of decay through a burial. So if you want to quickly get rid of someone, a fire is sort of an answer, but the problem with a fire is no matter how much effort you go to, you can still have small little things remaining, like small artifacts that can remain behind, metal buttons or whatever that you may not think about. In the Kelsey Bereth case, the staples that went into the pellet that the fire was made on, that those little staples fell into the ground, and he actually picked them up. I don't know if they used magnets or whatever, but they actually picked them up. But then the only thing that did remain was the sort of the plastic of the tote that had congealed into the dirt. They couldn't get rid of that, and then they put dirt over that. I'm just saying, even if you do a really good job with fire, it's still very difficult to get rid of all the evidence that there was a fire there. There's ash there. We know there is an ash pit on the residence, not a very big one from what I've seen. But the other problem with fire is that people can see it from a far way away, especially in rural areas. So you can effectively do what you want to do, but the problem is it's very hard for someone else not to see that. For example, in the Stephen Avery case, everyone saw that there was a very big fire on, I think, that Halloween night, right? And that is a problem, that you can have witnesses saying, well, I actually saw a fire, just, blah, 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 right? So although fire is effective in destroying evidence, it's very ineffective in terms of hiding what you're doing. Water is more effective, but water has the unfortunate thing of it disappears and then it comes back to haunt you later on. You saw that with the Scott Peterson case. And then there's the burial, which can do the same thing that you have with water, just over a longer period of time. So the point is, disposal is actually very, very difficult, and 99.9% of people don't get away with it, right? It might seem like it's very simple and very easy, but with the passage of time, it is very, very difficult. One of the hardest things when you're burying remains is odor, especially if you're doing so in a hurried fashion. And so far, that doesn't seem to be a factor here, which to me is a little bit surprising and a little bit worrying. People are talking about that the fact that, or the possibility that Summer was sold. So one reason why she likely wasn't sold, and I'm certainly not even going in that area. Yeah, what tools were used on Rose is that Summer would know, that Summer herself would know that she's being trafficked. Summer herself would know her name, and she would know, she's 5 years old, she would sort of know what's going on. In China, where trafficking is quite common, children are trafficked under the age of like 2 years old for that very reason, so that they don't know that they were abducted. They don't know, they don't sort of have that connection to their own parents. And so an older child is going to present a problem in that situation. Robert says, thanks, Robert. Will you touch on Don's response to being asked how he would punish who is responsible and why that is often important? I think what's really interesting with that was how someone said how Chris McDonough did try to lead him into certain areas, and Don sort of went there, and then I don't know if you noticed, he sort of stopped. Don sort of went in that direction, and then he kind of stopped himself. And that was one of the areas. Chris Watts jumped into that thing pretty well. When Don addressed that, he sort of seemed to backtrack a little bit and say, well, you know what, maybe there could have been an accident. So he's been adamant that there's been an abduction all along. And then when he talks about, well, what price would you pay? What sentence should this person get? Then suddenly he's open to the possibility that it could be an accident. And I think that is what has happened here. I think there was an accident, but not a pure accident in the sense that everyone is innocent if an accident happened. I think it was an accident waiting to happen. And the other things surrounding that are quite difficult to talk about on YouTube and openly, because it's just quite sensitive to do that. It's sensitive for quite a few reasons. Now, someone is saying you could use fire and water. We know that Don has actually asked for firewood. I always get a bit annoyed when you go down a particular line of reasoning and then someone says, it's absolutely normal that you would ask for a mountain of firewood in the middle of summer in Tennessee. The issue is, yes, but under these circumstances. So it might be normal and they might use wood a lot. The issue is, could that be relevant to these circumstances, right? Again, it relates to that point where we were talking about, was there breaking and entry? Was there forced entry? And someone might say, people all over Tennessee, people in the rural areas leave their doors open all the time. Yes, but is it relevant to an abduction? Because let me put it this way, if there was forced entry somewhere, there was a broken window somewhere or a door that had been forced open somewhere, then that would be a serious indicator of a potential abduction. But there's not that. So it doesn't mean because it's not there that it's not there, but if it was there, that would be a good indicator. Does that make sense? So I'm just saying you can't compare apples with apples where you say, well, this is completely normal in this situation. You've got to say, even if this is fairly normal, what about when you add a scenario where a child is missing? Is it still normal? Could there be a connection here? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It's just important to think about it that way, not to be dismissive out of hand, right? Hogs get rid of everything. Well, that's a horrible thought, but it is something that you see in the Joanna Cipriano case, which is a girl that went missing near Madeleine McCann. That was definitely a theory there, which I tend to actually agree with. Animals are definitely a factor, and certainly a factor with water disposal. I dealt with that a lot in my research on poor Lacey Peterson, and the result. I mean, when Lacey washed up and Connor washed up, a lot of that wasn't from decomposition. It was from animal, sea creatures, sea organisms, crime web. I asked Chris if there were alcohol containers around. Chris said there was nothing visible inside, but there were alcohol cans in the burn pile. That's interesting. So I guess you're talking about on the hilltop around the Welsh Chalet. By the way, those terms are terms that people have been using, and I'm adopting them because I think it's. I think at some point you've got to start using identifying terms, right? So I think I'm now ready to go into my theory, having provided some of that background, right? So let me start by just saying what I originally thought, and now where I'm sort of fine-tuning that, right? So I would say that I've already gone into two or three amendments. So the first thing, I don't know if you guys remember, was I said people need to search the property. People need to search the house and the area like 1 mile to 2 miles around the house. Do you remember that? And that would be kind of basic for this case, like search strategy 101, right? Right? And that was based on the assumption that what Candace was saying was sort of true, that Summer did go into the house and then whatever happened after that. And from there, I went to the position that I don't think Summer ever made it home on June the 15th. Summer left home, went swimming, but she never made it back, right? Okay, and so now I'm going to adapt that theory again, right? So it's basically starts off with Summer, whatever happened to Summer, you need to look for Summer at the home. Then it is Summer got taken somewhere else, Summer went swimming, but she never made it back. So now don't search the home. Search the home, but if you want to find Summer, you're going to have to search somewhere beyond the home, and somewhere in an unknown radius, probably more than 2 miles beyond the home, right? So that's the second, I guess, adaptation, or the first adaptation. The second one, the position I have now, is that Summer did make the return journey to the house, but not alive. In other words, and also not to the house. So Summer did return to Ben Hill Road, but not into the house, right? It's a theory. I could be wrong. It's just based on what the additional information we've gotten. And so what could be true is that Summer went with everybody to the swimming hole, to Kingsport, swam, things went well until a certain point. Then she wasn't doing so well. I don't know how long that took, but ultimately I think she was no longer alive. And then she was brought back to the property, but not up the property and not into the house, into the shed. What do you guys think about that? That she was actually placed in the shed, right? In order to be taken by somebody else away from the home. So in a weird way, all three scenarios are right. So meaning look at the property, well, including the sheds, look away from the property, at the swimming hole and beyond, but then she might have been brought back to the property in order for her to be taken not from the house, but from lower down from that access road, and then removed again to some unknown location, and we still don't know where that is. Now, I think a possibility and I'm obviously speculating. There's some channels that won't speculate. There's some channels that don't speculate. I don't like to speculate, but when I do, it's based on the information we have, and it's quite limited. I'm not going to be spending an hour just speculating. It's just taking what we think we know a little bit further. And when we get some more information, we can either say that little leading edge of what we think we know, that now becomes a solid sort of leading edge, and we can now move it a bit further, or we can say, you know what, that was probably taking things too far, let's move back. That's all we'd be really doing. So in terms of this, again, I want to just reference the Chris Watts case. Is what is quite important in a situation like this is that there's a risk to someone doing this, disposing of someone off their own property, right? There's a risk doing that. And the risk is, well, someone could stumble upon it, a searcher could find it. You could have all sorts of things happening. You could have a storm that washes away some kind of covering, all sorts of things that can happen while you are somewhere else and you don't have control over this situation, right? And that is very important to a criminal in this situation, is control. But what you can achieve to some extent is remote control. And Chris Watts, I think, felt that he had that. The fact that he moved Shanann, Bella, and Celeste remotely, he still had control in the sense that he knew that it was access control, that he knew not anyone, the public couldn't just walk over that area. And he also had the control in respect that he knew those tanks, whereas anybody else would be like, well, I don't know where to begin. What is going on there, right? So he had the control through that knowledge. And so the question is that a factor here as well? Is there also remote control? And the remote control here could be through indirect access to a work site or the workplace or something like that. But that may provide a clue in terms of, so you might say, if it's not at the house, it could be anywhere. And the answer is it could be. For example, in the Scott Peterson case, that turned out to be a case of it could be anywhere. Of course, when we knew that Scott Peterson took a boat out, it actually limited the search area. If you really followed it step by step, the timing of when he went and all that, it limited the search area to a specific area, and that is where Lacey and Connor were ultimately found. In the same way, with this case, you can kind of limit it in terms of if you know the time and you know what sort of distance someone in a vehicle could have made between a particular time and another, because you've got to go there and come back. Also, you've probably got to go there, do some digging in the dirt or whatever, pulling away boards or I don't know, whatever you're doing. Maybe that's going to take 20 minutes. I don't know. You need to put that in your calculation, but that is going to give you more targeted search. So you don't just say, well, let's search the whole of Eastern Tennessee. I did find that very interesting, going back to the Sermon on the Mount, when you analyze all the words that he's saying, where he says, well, then, it would be impossible to find her searching the whole of Eastern Tennessee. And that is what the person who's responsible wants to happen here, is for someone to just search everywhere, just to kind of be like, where's Summer? Well, let's just search everywhere. Well, that's not how a successful search is going to work. A successful search will search strategically using kind of scientific and mathematical equations and ideas to guide them, right? If you know what I'm saying, you're going to limit your search using facts and information, right? So it's not a stab in the dark. Wow. Caligal. I don't know if I saw your the amount that you gave, but thank you very much for that. Candy to lure Summer away. That is possible. I don't think Summer was lured in that sense. She may have been lured in a SA sense, if you get what I'm saying. That is definitely a possibility. Now, I think the other part, just to talk about in terms of the theories, is to say, if I'm just going to use A and B, if an accident happened with A, if someone was swimming and something happened with A, then why would B need to do anything about it? Why would B even get involved? Why wouldn't B just sort of say over the phone, do that, that, and that? You know, why would B want to get his hands dirty, right? What do you guys think about that question? Someone says, I don't think logical speculation is sad. It's not sad. Well, exactly what I'm talking about, you can bet the TBI are talking about. The TBI have to speculate based on what they know. They also don't know the end result. So how do you get to the point of finding something when you don't know the situation? You start building a mind map, and part of that mind map you fill in with what you know, and part of that mind map you fill in with what you don't know. You imagine scenarios and possibilities. You imagine potential solutions to the thing. Are there minds in the area? You know, that is why I say we really need people who live there to be part of the search. People who, so having someone come from Texas, EcuSearch or something, the best people to search that part of Tennessee are the locals, the people who know the terrain and know about the little idiosyncrasies in that terrain. Sharon says, I don't think it was an accident. I think that is more to the religion thing. Okay, so just to address that, why would B care about something happening while A was supposed to be looking after Summer, right? Why would B care? Well, this is a very difficult thing to talk about respectfully. It's a very difficult thing to address in the sort of way that it probably needs to be addressed. So I'm going to try and do it, but it is something that's delicate and difficult to address. So I think the answer is let me put it this way. Let's say an autopsy can be conducted. And I apologize if this is going to offend some people, and it's going to be shocking, and it's going to be not offensive, but it's going to be something that is going to be disheartening, certainly, and kind of grotesque, right? It definitely is grotesque. If an autopsy was conducted, and any child is missing, and the conditions are somewhat suspicious, but any child that is found not alive, you have a mandatory autopsy, right? In order to establish, was there foul play? What were the circumstances leading to this situation, right? And one of the things they might look for are substances, but the other thing is you would probably have something like an exam of the full little body, and you would want to examine the genitalia And the question then would be, would the hymen be intact? This is a 5-year-old girl. Would the hymen be intact? Now, I'm talking about a situation where she wasn't abducted, she wasn't trafficked, and that being the question. And that is the question that also came up in the John Benet Ramsey case. And you actually had a situation there where that question was asked, it was addressed, and it was extremely controversial. It was extremely upsetting to a lot of people, but it's also extremely critical because John Benet was 6 years old, and you were seeing, I call it interference, but you were seeing interference there that you shouldn't have seen. There was a problem, right? And is that why things needed to be hidden and buried and, covered up in the John Benet Ramsey case? That aspect, was that part of that? And now you take that into this case, right? And it is very early to be going into this area as far as I'm concerned. Jane from Tennessee, thanks a lot. It is very early, but if you want to ask the question, why would B care? Why would B kind of be panicking? And I think he used that word. Why would B, and I'm just using that as a theoretical persona, it could be anybody, but why would B really get involved and have urgency? And one possibility is that he might be responsible for something like that. And then there would be serious consequences if that was found out. Does that make sense? Do you guys follow what I'm getting at? So someone said, how is it that you know she's not being trafficked? And lots of exclamation marks. A couple of things. Number one is, if I think they intended to traffic someone, I don't think you'd go swimming that day. I don't think you'd have quite a few people seeing her that day. Macbeth and Alison and Grandma even, quite a few people. And then also driving all over town, right? So that's the one thing, witnesses. I think if you wanted to traffic someone, you would do it quite discreetly, and you'd also want someone not to have seen someone perhaps for a few weeks or something. You could argue that these people wouldn't think that way. They wake up one day and just suddenly have this feeling, I need money, and do it. You could make that argument. It's a counter-argument to that. The other thing, as I've mentioned, is trafficking happens all the time in China, and the age matters. You can't traffic someone, and Don did say he thinks this is a high-end thing. I'm not sure if he's talking about trafficking in that sense, but that his co-worker, abducted her to get him back, revenge, which is also something that was a motive that was used in the John Benet Ramsey case that never went anywhere. In fact, I think it was something that John Douglas sort of highlighted as his great insight. This is why it happened. And I don't think the evidence shows that. I don't think any of the investigations into colleagues panned out, right? Baltimore subdivision, Raymond says yes. Thanks, Raymond. Also, I don't know, I do feel like this is happening. If you want to believe that someone was trafficked, then you can go off and believe that. Maybe you like the idea of something being horrible and whatever, but then then that's your belief. But do you have any evidence to back it up? And you might say, well, what about what happened in the past? That is a good argument. That is quite a good argument. I think you've got to look at, well, was it successful in that case? What ultimately happened? Well, Don was caught out with the one child. So, yeah. The other thing is, what's the relevance of the last photo if trafficking is part of the whole thing? I mean, you might say, oh, someone was just sleeping and then she woke up and then the next thing she was trafficked. I don't think so. I mean, if you take the narrative that we have, if you take Don admits it, good point, Stephanie. You take the narrative that Macbeth says that Summer slipped on a rock and fell and she was underwater, and she was underwater for quite long. And Alison said that Summer was not herself. She was not coming out the vehicle. She was not talking. She was not responsive. The fact that you've actually got a video of her not being responsive. The last photo of Summer is Summer not, what do you call it? Not smiling, not breathing, or I don't know if she was breathing, but not active, not ambulant, right? And that seems to have a connection to the swimming hole. Another possibility is, if you want to insist on the trafficking thing, you could say at this point she was sedated and she was going to be not a problem when this transfer is going to take place. I don't know if I buy that, because I would imagine someone who wants to traffic someone wants to know, is this person healthy, or something like that. I don't know if they would want them in a state of apoplexy or whatever, right? And then I think the third area is just it's kind of like a gut feel. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't. I think it's something else, and I also think it is something that is screaming out. Some people just don't want to think about it, but aren't we seeing a lot of neglect in this case? Aren't we seeing not just neglect on one day or 2 days or a week, but a lifetime of neglect? That someone was saying someone never had a chance. Doesn't it feel like that? Let me just respond to some of these super chats. Paula Walking says someone has direct contact and good information. So get back to Paula for that. Robert says, the fact is, as a young man, yeah, that's a good point. I think it is very important. So, I think that's another question to ask is, would someone want to traffic someone when that someone was so important to that someone? The way Don talks about Summer is quite creepy. He talks about her as like the most important person in his life, and you can almost understand that Candace would be jealous, and that's exactly what Alison said, that Candace was jealous of Summer. But it's not in an innocent way. I don't know if that jealousy, I don't know if that what is going on is, it's not just, a father doting on his daughter. I think it's beyond that. Someone said neglect to the max. So I see we 1 like away from 1,000 likes. Let's see if we can get to 1,000. One more like, please, somebody. There, we're there. Thanks a lot, guys. So that brings me to the next thing, and then I'm going to take your questions. Is an arrest imminent? Right? Is an arrest imminent? So I'm going to try and get a sense from you guys. When I say is an arrest imminent, I'm saying, do you think there might be an arrest in the next week or so? In other words, let's say before the 2-month anniversary, before the 15th of this month, do you think there's going to be an arrest? Right? So let's get just say yes if you think there is, no if you think there isn't. Let's see what people are saying. Someone says, I hope so. M. Ray. Heather says yes, no. Bria says yes. A lot of people saying no. I wish I could tabulate this, but it's coming by so quickly. But there are quite a few no's and quite a few yeses. It seems There are quite a few no's, a couple of yeses. Some people say, I hope so. So I believe an arrest is quite imminent. There's what I want to do again is, and obviously when I say that, I'm speculating. I don't know what the TBI have got. I don't know what they retrieve from the phone records. I don't know any of what's in the discovery. But what I do know is, if you take cases like the Barry Morphew case, Barry didn't say a word. Barry made one appeal, and then there's a little bit of residual stuff. But if you compare Barry Morphew to Don Wells, look how long it took to arrest Barry Morphew, and look how little Barry said, right? And I think that's quite a good way, just to sum it up. Loose lips sink ships, and I think this ship is already sinking. It's not need some more for it to sink. It's already sinking. I think if you're going to ask the question, why hasn't there been an arrest already? I think, again, I'm speculating. I think it's because you could actually have more than one arrest. So you might have one person and another person, and then you could also have another person even beyond that. And I think that you might have a situation where the police want to cast a really wide net and catch all the fish, if that makes sense. And the longer they take, the more they can catch all the fish in it. And so I think one of the issues is if someone comes forward at this point that does know something, they can kind of get a benefit. They can get that they get kind of a credit for that you've assisted in the investigation, and you've maybe you did something wrong, but you've assisted. So we're going to be lenient towards you. You might not get nothing, but there are cases where someone who turns state witness does get completely off. And so that might be a factor here. The other factor is they still haven't found Summer. And maybe the more time they spend monitoring and waiting, the more time they spend on surveillance and being patient, the better their chances are of finding Summer, right? Liney Mark says, thanks a lot, Liney. She says, what gets me is these are not highly intelligent people. How could they be getting away with this? It's so obvious they're involved. So a lot of people are saying that, but I don't think that they are getting away with it. I think they are the impression is being created that they're getting away with it, which is to make them be casual, and they have been. They've been casual, and they've made mistakes, and they are. There's a lot of loose lips going on. All of that could have been prevented by early action, right? Bob Van Lara says, the for sale sign throws me off. Also, Don said law enforcement must have stolen his camera because no one else has been there. What about the abductor? Thank you. Love for Summer. Okay, let me take some of your questions. It's 1:45 here where I am, but could have been worse. Could have been a very early morning. Carrie Beth, I don't think they're unintelligent, but uneducated. Interesting point. They are being talked into different places. Okay. Shayla Lynn says, Don knows what happened, exclamation mark. Thomas says, look at their behavior, they know. I don't know if they know. I mean, if you see them at the prayer vigil, the last one, you see them looking quite guarded, I think there is a sense of, uh-oh, I don't think they expected this case to go viral. I don't think they expected America to be watching, America to be looking at what is going on, and it's quite difficult to do shady things when there's a spotlight on you. When everyone's watching, it's quite difficult to do that. Francesca Marsh, your presentations are incredible. Thanks. It's good to hear. Thanks, Francesca. Valerie, watch them all get arrested on other charges. Thanks, Valerie. I think what's quite an interesting point to make, but you've also got to be careful not to rush to judgment. So one of my first points, or one of the first things I was thinking about was, like if you say, Candace is innocent or Candace is definitely guilty. What about the gray area in between? So you say, well, if she was giving alcohol to a minor, surely she's responsible for that. But then her story is that, no, I did buy alcohol, but I gave it to grandma. And grandma can say, yeah, she gave alcohol to me. So regardless of what happened, what can you prove? That's the other issue that law enforcement are facing. Are you going to make these charges stick? It might be quite clear and obvious, but can you prove it? And grandma can create serious havoc by basically being a witness, right? So the other thing besides, so if you're saying, that undue influence by giving a minor something, is also Summer was not in a car seat. But if you had to kind of approach Summer and say, if you had to approach Candace and say, we're going to charge you with violating some kind of traffic thing, then that would be a slap on the wrist, and it would also be kind of like the law enforcement, how can I put it, antagonizing Candace, whereas there might be a certain level of grudging cooperation, right? So although you've got a few cards to play, you hold them back waiting for your hand to improve. So this idea that law enforcement have been completely outwitted and nothing's going to happen isn't true, but it feels like that at this point. It felt like that in the Laurie Vallow case. In many ways, it felt like that with the death of Tammy Daybell, Chad's wife. It also felt like that with Charles Vallow for a long time. It felt like, wow, how can nothing be happening here? And then something did happen. Joanne Spring says, I like your style. Critical thinking is a joy to behold. I must say, I think it's something this world sorely needs right now, critical thinking. I think critical thinkers aren't people like to be wowed and awed by shocking and salacious things, and if you don't think critically about it, then it's even more shocking and salacious. But I think this world really needs more critical thinking. And I see there are almost 3,000 of you that I hope are fellow critical thinkers. Diana Persing says pillow. That is definitely a piece of evidence that could be really important. Michael, that is definitely what could be going on. Yeah. It's not only Summer that could have spilled the beans on him, but if Summer was found not alive and she was examined, that examination would have a story to tell. The question is, how would that reflect on other family members? Timmy's like always right here when I start this, but by the time I'm into it, he totally disappears. I don't think Timmy gets an ASMR from me, Okay, let's take some of your questions. I think I'm going to be on another 10 minutes or so. Someone says, why did Summer not like her mother? So, interesting question. I don't know if it's true that she didn't like her, but I think the question could be who disciplined Summer. You can have a situation where Dad goes to work. Yeah, Stephanie, good point. She says those are Don's words, but let's assume that they are true, which you don't really know. You don't. How often do you see photos of Don and Candace, and Don and Summer? But what we do know is that Don goes to work, and then Summer is with her mother, and her mother would be necessarily saying, don't do this, don't do that, and whatever. When a father returns from a hard day, he would be tired and probably more, permissive, a permissive parent, letting her do what she wanted to do. And that might make him seem like the nicer parent or something like that. I don't know about you. I don't know if you grew up with one parent that disciplined you and the other one that was kind of the good cop. I don't know if you've had that situation. But I'm not convinced that is how Summer felt, to be honest. Kids gravitate to who they get the most attention from. And there are quite a few pictures where you see Candace with Summer and they seem quite happy together. Not saying it's perfect, but there seems to be a bond of some sort. Bear in mind, there's quite a strong bond between Grandma and Candace. No matter what the dysfunction is, that is one of the strongest relationships I think in this story is between Grandma and Candace. I think there's also quite a strong relationship between Macbeth and Alison and his mother. Heather O'Brien, good to see you. Heather's been very helpful with a lot of research and so on. She says, I missed the start. Can you please repeat what you think happened? Sorry, Heather, I'm not gonna go through it again. I think it's at the half an hour mark. I'm not sure, but I'm not going to repeat that. It's something you've got to articulate carefully. It's 3 hearts for me. Says this case will probably be a movie someday, maybe. Deborah says, was anyone interrogated? Any pressure put on any of them? I think taking 3 lie detector tests is pressure. Heather asked the question, do you think she will ever be found? I do. When I say that, I don't necessarily mean intact, and I think it might be something like Kaylee Anthony, sadly. But I'm also aware that what happened to Rose, and I think that it's possible that she won't be, but just given my experience, given missing persons cases, it seems like someone has disappeared, and law enforcement almost always find these people. It's extremely difficult to get away with this, and I don't know if I think that the people responsible were up to the task. I'm not sure. The factor that is to some extent relevant here is Tennessee, the landscape, and it is quite a tricky landscape. But you could have said that as well about Colorado. I don't. We still haven't gotten access to the discovery there, but I mean, you also had the Kelsey Bereth case in Colorado, and they found a tooth fragment. And so to answer your question, do you think she'll ever be found? I think so, yes. I don't know if you guys remember the Scott Peterson case. There were also times, especially after the first and second month, where it felt like, well, we're never going to see Lacey again. You know, she's gone. She wasn't. I must also say that the more time that goes by, the more likely is that she won't be found, unfortunately. And quite a lot of time has gone by, 51 days. Heather says, I think she loved her parents. Children don't know that their life is a mess at 5. Excellent point. Now, when you see her running after the boys on that motorbike and on the swing, children at 5 can be delighted with very little. As you say, that they may not know that their life is a mess. Cindy Target, sorry to hear about that. Imre says someone needs to do a wellness check on grandma. Thanks, KK Heflin 3. Thanks a lot for that. So just have a look at some of your questions here. Stephanie says, thank you, KK Heflin 3. I've really enjoyed your comments on the channel. Kim says, why do you think the cars haven't been taken and grandma allowed to leave? Grandma left about a month later. I wouldn't be surprised if grandma is under some kind of surveillance by law enforcement where she is. So what was the other part of the question? Why do you think the cars haven't been taken? I think they probably have searched the cars. I do hope so. I know in the Chris Watts case, it felt like not enough attention was paid to the vehicles. I do think it's very interesting, the car narrative here. You know, Candace saying something like she threw her phone in the back of Don's truck. I don't know if she talks about which vehicle she drove around in. And Don, I don't know if Don, I don't think Don said that him and Candace drove anywhere. It would be interesting to know what law enforcement say if they did, if it was Don and Candace, or did they go in 2 separate vehicles? It would be really interesting to see the timeline that the police had, because surely the police noticed when people arrived and left and then arrived back again. Let's just have a look. In the Bernardo case, both were found guilty. She was driving her mom's vehicle. Yeah, I'm talking about when she left the property the second time. I don't know if it would make sense for her to drive her mom's vehicle then. Of course, Don was driving her vehicle that day, which is odd. Definitely odd. The other thing is like if you're talking about grandma's silence, right next to grandma's silence is the still unknown driver of the red Tacoma, Toyota Tacoma, 1998, 2000. It's a really weird situation where some things are kind of blindingly obvious in this case, and then there are some things that we just don't know. And I think that is partly why there's this growing fascination about it, is where is Summer? We can speculate about what happened to her, but what exactly did happen to her? And then why is Grandma silent. Who is she protecting, and how far does that protection go? And then there's also the driver of the red Toyota Tacoma. If that person's innocent, why are they not coming forward? If that person's not innocent, what's that all about? And that is not Don's co-worker. Don said his co-worker drives a yellow vehicle. So it's not the same vehicle. Laurie V says, where is David Dodson? Now he's missing in action. That's true. So I think he's had a change of heart in some respect. I think there have been a couple of people that have been put up their hand right in the beginning, and now you don't really see them. I'm curious about Robin Lane. She seems like a really good person. She seems very like she really cares about Summer. I wonder how her heart is being affected by all of this. Because at the bottom of it is uncertainty. Who to trust, what did happen, what to do. I really kind of felt for her when she was praying, and she said, we feel so helpless. What can we do? We can't search. What can we do? And that is a sense I think that some people in the community do feel. Someone said, I'm sorry, but Dobson gave me the creeps. Fortunately, we need more than that. Like, if everyone gave one the creeps, we don't want to find people guilty merely in the court of public opinion. Well, you give me the creeps, okay, you're in trouble. I thought he was a bit of an oddball, but besides that, he seemed genuine in certain ways. His work, being a mortician, was certainly curious. But he kind of reminds me of Robert Murat in the Madeleine McCann case. There's a whole story around that. Someone asked, who is B? And people say, who is Macbeth? Well, there's a reason that you've got to be careful in how you refer to people. Prayer Garden of America, Grandma is healing. She has lived this nightmare twice, and what good does it to tell the truth when no one wants to believe it? Well, I think if Grandma put up on Facebook, like this was, like a long kind of essay, this is what happened, this is what I saw, and gives her timeline, I think a lot of people would pay attention and who knows, perhaps believe it. Lisa says Robin is on vacation. Maybe she needed a break. Maybe. I'm considering going away for a weekend. Not this one, but maybe not in the too distant future. Someone says, I was pregnant with our second son when Lacey Peterson went missing. I think there's something doubly traumatic about that when you're going through something only to look in on someone else's nightmare in a way, Brenda says, Don, stop talking. So I think that's also quite interesting is if you say, why has Don just kept talking? What is actually going on there? Well, I think it's from low impulse control. So how many times has Don said something like, I'm not going to touch another drop of alcohol. I'm a changed man. I think he said that in one of the first really amazing interviews with Times Online to that reporter. He was also a really good interviewer. And he said, I'm a changed man and I've turned back to God. But then between then and now, he seems to have backslid, but backsliding seems to be really part of his story. Like it's just to be expected, kind of thing. I also want to ask you guys probably quite a controversial question, but also a necessary one. If you look at everything that happened with Chris McDonough, right? So I'm talking about in the last 4 or 5 days. So basically what happened in August. So I want you just to frame it around there, right? And the issue is Don talks to Chris McDonough. Don doesn't feel like it kind of goes in his favor. It kind of seems to backfire in a way. And then Don complains about it on Facebook. And then how does he do that, right? And I submit to you, I would say, well, what he does is he kind of shoots himself in the foot. He gets himself into trouble. He is responsible for what he says. I mean, I'm not saying he takes responsibility for it. I'm saying no, it's no one's fault that he says what he says except him, And then he tries to throw Chris McDonough under the bus. He blames him. He tries to, I don't know, do all sorts of things. And then he also brings God into it. And one of my earliest videos was, are they using God as a crutch? And a lot of people took a huge offense at that, saying, you know what, you don't understand people in Tennessee. And my response was simply, I'm not imposing myself onto Don or Tennessee, but that is what Allison said right in the beginning. Allison said Don uses the church as a crutch based on the past up to that point. Someone else who said that was, I'm trying to think, I think Mary Howard, his stepsister, said the same thing. And I don't know about you guys, but aren't we just seeing it happening? You sort of see Don get himself into hot water, Don misspeaking, Don contradicting himself, all this kind of stuff. And then he sort of almost seems to wipe it all away and say, you know what, I believe in God or whatever. And I think it's worked for him in the past. Is it going to work for him again? Is the congregation going to give Don a pass, given what Don admits to doing, to being, to habitually, right? Should the congregation, if they listen to that transcript, if they read it and paid attention, should they be uncritical of it? Is it their job not to think about things like that? Not to hold Don accountable for some of the things, bearing in mind the other children have been removed as well. But to me, the critical question is, has Don and is Don using the church as a crutch? And if you say no, then aren't you allowing him to continue to do that? Or is it... is it not a question we should even be asking? Forever Young says Don believes in dog. That's quite funny. Got to look at every angle. I'm really looking forward to introducing you guys to Bria. We're going to try and do that tomorrow or Sunday. I haven't quite spoken to Stephanie or Bria enough to know that they're both available, but it'll either be tomorrow or the next day. So Saturday or Sunday. Sorry, where I am, it's already Friday. I think you guys are almost at Friday, but where I am, it's Friday. So we're going to talk to them, and I really want you to hear what Bria says about the dogs. It really makes sense that the dogs are there for a reason. The dogs are a cheap security layer. The dogs are an alarm system, an alert system. Well, to what end? For what? Isn't it obvious? So it's not just that there are a lot of dogs and the dogs are being neglected. The dogs are there for a reason. And unfortunately for Don, the dogs have kind of bitten him in the ankle in the sense that, well, they interfere with the abduction scenario because it just, with 20 dogs running around, whatever you want to say, 13, even if it was 5, an abductor wouldn't feel comfortable trying to approach quietly or leaving quietly. You just wouldn't be able to because of this fabric that is put up there for that reason. Truth or Tradition says, where's the flute guy? That's David Dodson. Yeah, we haven't seen him, even at the prayer circles. We haven't seen him. We haven't seen really family members or friends running around these people. Where are their friends from like a long time ago? Where are those people? Stephanie says, and the dogs were on vacation on June 15th. Yeah. Ninth Realm says, Don believes in Don. I don't know what you guys think. Some people said that they found Don's voice very soothing. You know, if you tuned out what he was saying, you know, what he was actually talking about, his voice was actually quite soothing and almost hypnotic. Did some of you guys find that? Edna Brownlee says, I think he's throwing out clues like someone rich and powerful. Okay. Alison. Yvonne Phillips says, yes, he uses religion to shield his true self. Moon Rain says, Jodi Arias's voice is soothing, Don's is not. Okay. Well, some people were soothed by it. I certainly don't. I get the sense that he's got that drawl, which is quite, there's sort of a tenor to it, isn't it? But Tio Girl says he has a nice voice without looking at him. Andrea Knoble says socially awkward people are creepy, but yeah, it does not incriminate him necessarily. Not sure that's a reference to, but yeah, that's true. Fabled Fantasy says that law enforcement was questioning Macbeth's girlfriend. I didn't know that, but I think that's necessary. One of the first versions of the story of the swimming hole, as far as I know, came from her. She was the one who actually said that someone was under the water for a minute. Someone says, Don is not soothing. Yeah. Anna, yes, to answer your question. Someone says, my voice is soothing. Not to everyone. I've gotten some horrible comments about my voice, but you know, some of them are positive, some aren't. Heather D, superb channel. I refuse to watch anyone's discussions of this case. However, this has been a delight. I look forward to more. So much to share and discuss. I think Plundered also does a really good job. She often finds, she goes the extra mile. It's also a good channel worth paying attention to. Sandra Helton, I love your voice. Thanks a lot. Some people have told me they use me for ASMR. In other words, they don't actually listen to what I have to say. They want to be put to sleep. I always find that quite funny. Linda, okay, so you believe in the trafficking scenario. Bobby Cat, people be kind in your comments. What you put out in the universe comes back tenfold. I must also say there were some really nasty comments towards Stephanie, some also towards me, where people said, I don't want to hear what Stephanie's got to say. There were a lot of people who said they really enjoyed what she said, and that is by far the most viewed live I've ever done, the one that I did with Stephanie. So, I think I actually welcome the insults because the nastiest people just will lose that privilege. They get they won't be allowed to comment again. So people who are obviously nasty, by all means, let us know, and then you gone, kind of thing. We also try and have a well-mannered community here, and for the most part it is. But obviously there are a lot of new subscribers coming in. But like anything, just try and be nice. Especially Bria's going to be coming on this weekend, and it's quite simple. If enough of you can't be nice, we will just have our conversations kind of privately on Patreon, where I think 600 and something people who know each other and like each other. So if it is made too uncomfortable and unpleasant here, it's really not a problem just moving it there. And to be honest, those sort of discussions you kind of want with a smallish captive audience, where people feel comfortable being themselves, right? So I just want to ask you guys to be nice to the people we have on here. I know some people want to hear me, but this is something new that I'm doing, and I'm also doing more lives than I normally do. I normally do only one live a week, and I'm sort of doing sometimes 2 a week or whatever. So, let's try and be open to new people and new things, and obviously you're free. If you're not interested in listening to a certain person or whatever, then move on to something you are interested in. So if you find, well, I don't really like it when he has guests on, I like it when he don't watch, kind of thing, please don't give the person who is a guest grief. It's just not fair, right? Someone says, is this the end? I think we've moved quite close to the end as far as I'm concerned. I think something's going to happen by the 15th of, before or by about the 15th of August. But it could also drag on. I personally don't think so, for many reasons. One is just because so much has been put out there. I don't think these conversations have helped Don or Candice. They've been really good. It's a big contribution to the fabric of this case, but I certainly don't think it's helped either of them. And they've actually contradicted one another as well, right? You've actually had Macbeth saying something which is contradicted by Candice, which is then contradicted by Don. And it's not a good look. Kim says, it's YouTube, you get good and bad, just ignore it. Thanks, Kim. That is what we try to do. Okay. Take off the hat. You want me to take off my hat? How's that? Yeah, it's quite cold. It's winter where I am. I did sort of notice when Chris McDonough interviewed his experts that I thought, wow, they both kind of look like me, right? It is getting a little bit warmer here, so you might actually see me not wearing the hat as often. Where are you? Now the shirt. Oh, okay. Well, now I think we're rapidly reaching the end of this broadcast. I absolutely agree with that. Ibidibbi. Don is throwing spaghetti on the wall. Absolutely. Mary says, put it back on. Just kidding. Smart guys lose their hair. Must be all those brain cells. This is pretty disgusting, but in Africa and in, I guess, South Africa, bald guys, but I'm talking about where it's really obvious, like where they've got quite a lot of hair here, right? And then no hair here, but like a lot of hair here. I think you guys know that look. They sometimes abduct or kill those people, and they sell their body parts for muti, because they believe that you can get magical intelligence through that. Something that is known to happen in South Africa and in Africa. You can Google muti. It means it's spelled M-U-T-I. It's kind of a medicine, a magical medicine that you get from that. It's yeah. Let's just look at some of your comments. I'm not going to talk too much more. Am I wrong, or did Don say that Grandma doesn't drink? I'm not sure about that. I know he was saying that he doesn't touch a drop, or hasn't for a while. Not quite sure, but that's quite an interesting question, Tingle Bar. Leanne, thanks for your comment. I'm not actually going to read it, but thanks for that. Tina, just made it in. Did I miss anything? I think you did miss a bit. Tina, in this live, we've spoken about my theory of what happened, and is an arrest imminent, and some of the tools that could have been used in the commission of this crime, amongst other things. Thanks, Imre. Wow. Chakra. It's called muti. You can Google it, M-U-T-I. Ken says, Don drinks like a fish, in my opinion. I think you could be right. Marie, that's how I feel. Keep your hair short then, yeah. Have you experienced any unrest recently? Yeah. Not as badly as certain provinces, but there has been quite a lot. I ordered a book from Amazon, has been really delayed, so I don't know if that had something to do with it. Sarah Green says, who do you think will be arrested? I'm not going to answer that question, but I think you can imagine what could be the answer there. I do think it's quite interesting that Chris McDonough didn't provide any comment on his call. I thought that was certainly quite interesting. I also think it's interesting what Chris McDonough hasn't spoken about, and where he's not weighed in, right? Let's have a look. Mama Bear says, Tina, you need a full rewind. Bella says, how do you feel about Don not wanting to put the person who did this in prison? That's a really good point. So again, it's a really good test of whether someone is being authentic in the scenario. So in other words, someone who is authentic in the scenario wouldn't have any doubt. It would be quite simple, what to say. Whereas someone who has a horse in the race, so to speak, would kind of be thinking, wow, whatever I say, I'm kind of dooming myself, right? So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to say, what, my daughter was abducted, and we're so worried about it, and we're going to all these prayer vigils. Well, what should happen to her abductor? I'm not sure. It's another flag. It's another red flag. I do think Don wasn't born yesterday. He's been through police interrogations before. He's had dealings with the with law enforcement. So I think he's playing his own game. The question is he playing it very well? So I'm going to just put this back on. My head is getting a little cold. Mind. I'm going to sign off at 2 hours, so I'll just take 5 more minutes of questions. I'm sure Bria also wants to go to sleep. It's also quite late in France where she is. Cal D, if I thought someone took or harmed my daughter, I would want to, yeah. So, you would be quite adamant, you'd be quite sure what, and you would express it with emotion. You'd be like, it wouldn't be a sort of a nonchalant, hypothetical kind of thing. A Stitch in Crime, cool name. He's no stranger to law enforcement. He should know when to shut his mouth. That's quite interesting, which just shows you to what extent impulse control has been worn away, weathered away by years of, this activity that's been going on. Bobby Cat, I must have missed the part when Chris asked Don what should be done to a person who hurt Summer. What happened, please? Don I think he sort of started off saying, what you'd expect him to hear, and he sort of kind of backtracked and kind of said, well, if it was an accident, then it depends, kind of thing. But I mean, he's been adamant from the word go that it was an abduction. So his answer should be based on that he believes it's an abduction, and that his daughter's been missing for 51 days. What should happen to the perpetrator? It should be quite clear. But the fact that he's ambivalent is another red flag, I think. Bella says, you and I think the same. He has given more flags than a Chinese parade. Yeah, there has been a lot of flags. Ruth Bartlett, I wish you'd wear a black hoodie and hold your head down. I actually did that. I think the very first live I did, I think I did that. I think I sort of started and I said, the most authentic voice and face of true crime. By the way, for those who are new here, but even those perhaps who know me, the most authentic voice in true crime I didn't come up with that. Someone who'd been reading my books for a long time, book after book after book, said that about the books I was writing, right? The most authentic voice in true crime, meaning the words, the sentiments expressed in these narratives. And I often use the word authentic in the narratives. And so I really remembered that particular statement. I think it was in a book review. And after a long time being on YouTube, I actually thought, wow, why not use that? And I think I had other ideas as well, the most trusted voice in true crime and the most credible voice in true crime. But I thought the one that I wanted to aspire to, and the one that I wanted to reflect and embody, was the most authentic voice in true crime. So it wasn't really something I just came up with. It was something someone else came up with that I thought, wow, that is a value and a standard I would like to strive towards, and I hope I am. Kim says, looking forward to the next program with you all. Good night, Nix and mods. Thanks a lot, mods. Stephanie, thanks for putting up the link to those books there. I hope Chalk Baby finds that useful. Ken Dalton, I love that intro. Thanks a lot, Ken. Yeah, Toots, it is definitely quite crazy. One thing I mentioned, I think, in the last episode was what was crazy was Don saying, I want to go and speak to drug dealers. He's going to go and investigate this case. He doesn't need the cops to do it. I thought that was quite ironic. Okay, so guys, I'm going to be out of here. I'm really glad that I was able to do the live. I see there's still 2,400 of you in chat. Sorry for the delay. I know some of you were waiting. It was a little bit circumstances out of my control. The lights went out, I think, around about 10:30 my time, and then stayed off for about 2 hours. But they actually said it could have been 6 or 7 hours, so it actually turned out quite well. But thank you for being patient. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for those who've liked the video. Obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Look out for the live we're going to do this weekend with Bria and Stephanie participating. Bria's got some really interesting comments to make, as I say, about the dogs and certain other things. So look out for that. Bria is based in France, so it's going to be another very interesting voice that is part of the community at this channel. If you're interested in getting to know some of the other community members, head to Patreon. That's patreon.com/TCRS. There are over 600 people that are just a nice group that know each other and that have very interesting conversations with one another. So if you want to be part of that group, head on over to there. Again, thanks everyone, and I'll see you guys next time.